Well,
It's good to see you.
welcome
Thanks.
to the Conspiracy Dad podcast.
Oh, you're talking to, okay.
Talking to you
Okay.
and the world
Good.
at the same time. It's kind of weird that I'm looking in your eyes and the world
Yeah,
at the same time.
Well, yeah.
Welcome, Dave.
Thanks from all of us in
From
the world. Yeah.
Speaking for everybody.
Thanks for having us here.
It's good to have you and the world in my studio tonight. It's been a week and a half since we podcasted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good to see you, bud. I think let's do dad.
Okay.
A new segment brought to you by Conspiracy Dad podcast.
Mm-hmm. Sponsored by this
Sponsored
very
by
podcast that you're
Conspiracy
listening
Dad
to.
We should get a sponsor one day and they could pay us.
That sounds pretty good.
But what dad, we should call it we need a catchy segment.
When I type a note down, I just call it dad vice.
Dad vice.
So advice for dads. That's just an easy adding a D to the front of the word advice, but it's a working title.
Dad vice. Okay,
it kind of sounds
unless I think of a better one before the end of the podcast, we'll just go with that.
I'm not married to it, and it sort of sounds like something that could be misconstrued, like dads talking about things like moral failings, vices for dads. That's not what I'm going for. I'm talking about like advice for dads. So it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's almost like really utilitarian advice.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
like Miami Vice, like dads in like Don Johnson type jackets.
I don't know if we could pull. I did have a mustache a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you had like a whole dad vice thing going.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Like a dad vice, that's the look. Like
is
aviators
like
and a
Vice.
mustache.
Well, what was your dad vice?
Well,
and if I think of a better catchphrase for the segment brought to you by conspiracydadpodcast.com, what was your dad vice for this week?
The first one that occurred to me since we've been together last was you ever work with those ratchet straps that you use to tie things down on a trailer?
Mm-hmm.
A percentage of the time, I'd say over half the time, I do it incorrectly. I thread them in such a way that when I go to unwork the strap, I pull the trigger, go to unlatch it, and it's the knot is buried down deep in the
too deep
cylinder.
To
what it should look like, yeah, exactly. When you pull the trigger on those ratchet straps, if you're a man, it should exactly. So I was fishing this knot out, and undoing it, and I thought, you know what, this is ridiculous. I've done this correctly a few times, and I've done it wrong a lot of times. You're not a dad, you're not a man till you can consistently do that. So like, if you have a son, like you've got is Kanan 16?
15.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to use all the first names and ages and everything.
That's okay. I don't think we have too many stalkers yet.
Good. So yeah, I think as the dad of a son, you're constantly cooking on like, how can I train my son to be a good man? Like,
that's the goal.
And not just a virtuous man. Like most certainly that's up there on your priority list, but also just like I always say, like a good dude. So like, for instance, I was talking with my wife today about like a good dude is engaged and gives eye contact and gives you some feedback to show that they're listening, right? And so I'm trying to teach that to my son right now. Another thing a good dude and man can do is run one of those ratchet straps without having to watch YouTube every time. And just like a lot of skills, you either have like somebody like Kokomo's grandfather-in-law who just has known how to ratchet things down for years and can do it, with his eyes closed backwards, teach you how to do it. Or some of us, we acquire skills by watching YouTube. That's fine. The fact is, you need to know how to do that as a skill.
That's from Napoleon Dynamite.
What's that? The ratchet strap?
Girls want guys with skills.
Oh, totally.
Like
that's right.
Nunchuck skills,
yeah.
Computer hacking skills, and ratchet strap skills.
And then I thought, okay, well, a few years down the road, Jane's going to be dating boys. And if one of these boys comes to me while I'm cleaning my gun and stretching out before I go to jiu-jitsu, and
In
asks
your
for her hand,
leotard.
and he asks for my daughter's hand in marriage, I'm just going to hand him a ratchet strap and go like,
What can you do with this?
yeah, exactly. And game on at that point.
That's just another layer to the dad app.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That might be like the final stage of the dad app. It's like all these psychological tests,
Yes.
political,
Yeah.
religious tests, and then at
Pretty
the end of
good.
it, you just hand them the ratchet and you go, "Final step, buddy. Good luck."
This is the
And then
last.
if I mean, would it suck if you got all the way through that and you just happen to
And you get
be
handed the
like this
ratchet.
white collar
Yeah.
dad never required me to do anything, so then I
Boy,
just can't do it.
I was thinking just in the last couple of days, I knew a young lady whose almost fiance was about to finish law school. So they're on a trajectory to have a pretty comfortable life. And this same young lady, her dad is a retired fireman, and his retired job is a super blue collar job. I won't get into a lot of detail, but he's working with gun safes day to day. So like
Mhm.
I'm sure he knows how to use ratchet straps, right? And I just thought, I wonder what that guy thinks about his future son-in-law, because in a lot of categories, this future son-in-law can do things that he can't do if he's like, knowledgeable about litigious matters. But I think if I'm a retired firefighter and I'm working with gun safes and I'm running my own business and I'm kind of like, yeah, but, you know, when it hits the fan, is this the guy you're counting on? Or
Yeah. I
so,
don't know. It makes me think of I was telling you earlier about that show True Detective,
yeah.
which if you haven't watched it, it's one of the greatest shows ever made. Unbelievable. But there's a scene in it where Matthew McConaughey's character Marty, or no, Rust is has borrowed Marty's lawnmower, and Marty isn't home. So Rust takes the lawnmower back over to his house. His wife and kids are there, and uh, his lawn needs a cut. So he's thinking, I'll just return the favor, and he
Totally.
just mows Marty's lawn for
Yeah.
him. Marty comes home. Rust has mowed his lawn, and he loses it
He's so
because
it's like he
he's
slept with his wife. Like,
yeah. It's and it's this really powerful scene where he's flipping out, and Russ is Matthew McConaughey is just like I was just trying to pay the favor, nothing personal. He's like, I like to mow my lawn.
that makes a lot of sense to
Nobody,
me. Yeah.
I don't want you or anyone else mowing my lawn. It's what I like to do.
That has happened to me one time. My brother-in-law, who I'm very fond of, was trying to do me a favor. Like I was late getting home from work and my wife must have said something like, "Oh, well, if we're going to eat on time, he's going to want to mow before we sit down to eat." And so
Yeah,
I get home and my brother-in-law and my son are trying to be really nice. They've already gotten to started on the lawn. And I was like,
that's that scene. Yeah,
this is not how I would have done it. And also I want to do it myself.
my lawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Who was that innuendo in the mowing there's some sort of sexual innuendo in the scene, with the wife, like almost like you've cheated on me with my wife, kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
this is my space. You don't come in here and
totally.
touch my lawn.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're picking the lines, you're edging it in yeah, it's an intimate thing,
yeah.
your relationship with your lawn. So
So I don't know how I got derailed onto that. Just
you want to
about
hear?
the skills. But you were talking about ratcheting. So
Yes.
the dad hack.
So
That's
that
what I was going to call it. Dad
I
hacks.
like that. That's a better
Dad
one than
vice.
dead
Dad
vice.
hack is better.
I'll go for that. Yeah.
I thought of it earlier today, and I thought
Dad hack.
dad hack.
So here's my other dad hack. And this one is like the first one I think I believe in is like,
Which
that's
is
for
just
sure
to
what I'm going to do.
button up the first one
Oh, yeah.
is just learn that skill. Like
Dad
you
hack,
need to learn how to use a ratchet strap.
learn how to use a ratchet
Part of being a
strap.
dad,
It's, yeah, for
just
sure.
generally.
Yeah. If you plan on being a dude, a capable dude one day, and certainly if you're going to be a dad, you want your son, okay, two things. One, you want your future son in law to come ask for your daughter's hand in marriage, and he better be able to do it. Also, you want your son one day to be on a podcast with his buddy and talk about you like this. Boy, my dad could ratchet strap so fast. Like I still am trying to figure out how to do it well. And like the way Kokomo talks about his granddad-in-law, that's how you want your kids to talk about you
Okay,
when you're
fair
old.
enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Um,
Second dad hack.
Second dad hack. I just cooked this scheme up this morning, so this one's like a little less structured, but it's what I'm going to start trying out of frustration with my kids. Um, when my wife and I first started dating, like you do in an early dating relationship, at some point you're going to cook a meal together for lack of other things to do or funds to go out and eat. And she said something about leaving the handle of the skillet, like the pan, hanging off of the counter, off the stovetop.
Mhm.
And she said something like, like if young kids are around, you don't want it to be where they can reach up and grab a hot skillet and burn themselves,
Yep.
or you don't want it to be at eye level to run by and hit their heads. And I thought, easy, we just started dating. Um, but ever since that moment, I've been pretty cognizant of where the handles are on our skillets. So years before we got married, years before we had kids, I've been in the habit of putting skillets 45-degree angle, not hanging off the
Because of
countertop.
her.
Yeah, just the one time she mentioned it to me.
You learn really fast, don't you?
Thank you for noticing. Tell her. Um, Now, it follows to reason that one that would want to keep skillet handles hanging off of, or keep them from hanging off the countertop or the stovetop, would also not want blades out, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that
because you can do the same thing. You grab the blade
you don't
and
want,
falls down on the
yeah.
kid's eye.
So scissors, right? Those should be closed and those should be in a drawer in a home. Scissors have a home in your
Mhm.
house. They don't belong just sitting anywhere wide open. Certainly
Well, it
not on the
depends on the
floor.
kind of scissors because they make those kids scissors. You're not talking about the
I'm talking
plastic
about
ones.
like the kind of scissors your mom would use when she's
Yeah,
doing like a,
basically
like a,
two knives.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like the blades 4 to 6 inches
I'm just
long.
saying they make kid ones
Yeah,
that
yeah. I'm not
like.
talking about like grade school supply list scissors with the plastic rounded ends. I'm talking like if you went to buy a pair of scissors today, these are the scissors you would get.
Kind of scissors that you would find in a Clue game if you were to
Yeah,
murder somebody. You could kill
yeah, yeah.
someone with them.
Those type of scissors you would not just leave out anywhere around the house. Maybe not on the floor, wide open, right?
So how do you stop that from happening as a dad?
Well, I'll tell you how you don't do it by reminding everyone in the house where they belong and holding them up and saying, guys, hey, remember, we keep the scissors in this drawer. I found them out on the countertop again. Just want to remind everybody scissors go in the drawer. That's the home for them. Remember, it's not safe. I just about stepped on them. They were on the floor last time. So, guys, just want to remind everybody here's what I'm trying now. This morning, they're all rushing out the door to get to school, and I can tell they're in a hurry. And I found the scissors, and I couldn't stop myself. And I'm like, oh, hey, wait, family meeting. I know you guys are in a hurry. Scissors. I don't ever want to see them in the drawer again. So if you see them in the drawer, please pull them out, throw them on the ground.
Yeah.
If you have time, maybe hide them in the bed.
Actually, before you throw them, run around the house with them a
Do
few
that,
times
yeah.
and then throw
Be
them.
sure they're
Yeah.
open. If you ever see them closed, open them up. If you don't have time to put them in the drawer, pull them back out and throw them. So I'm trying reverse psychology on the kids at this point.
Did it work?
We'll see. I'm going to go home and see where the scissors are.
I did. You should do this. So the other day, my wife, we're pulling up in the car and she tells all the kids, when we get home, you guys go inside and get a trash bag and clean out the garbage in the back of your dad's
Great.
car
Yeah.
because he didn't make this mess. You
Right.
guys made a mess in here. And
Yeah.
oh, okay, okay. And I'm doing something else. And then I'm outside and minutes pass, 10 minutes pass, no kids have emerged with a trash bag. So I go back because then I'm immediately, I don't care so much about the garbage. I'm like, you're disrespecting your mother who just told you
Totally.
to do
Yeah.
something. So I get all the kids in. Hey, guys, come in here. Do you guys all go to a good Catholic school, right? And they're like, yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
do you guys remember the 10 Commandments? And they're like, I'm thinking like, they'll get 3 of them. Honestly, nothing. They're like, don't be mean, or something.
Okay.
I'm like,
Not asking
not even
what
close.
you're guessing what they might be. I'm asking if you remember
But
them.
we worked our way through till we got to honor thy mother and father. And it was
Okay.
like, okay, so you guys understand you just dishonored your mother. You need to go out there and but you could just make up commandments like don't leave the scissors on the
It's
floor
in the Bible,
and
guys.
you could just like tell them it's a commandment from God. And you could take this from the Catholics. You said that's a mortal sin. You know what I mean?
I didn't make that
we
rule.
don't. This is not a venial thing. You're gonna burn in hell if you don't put those scissors back in the drawer. You tell them
That's
that
not
at
bad.
a young enough age.
It'll get
They
in
just
there.
psychologically condition them to never leave the scissors out.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, if one day they'll realize you're full of shit, and then be like,
But by that time,
Dad made up all these religions that don't even exist.
But then I think that right after that they go, but it is a good
But it did
rule
work.
in general to keep scissors in a drawer instead of just wide open on
Good
the
dad
floor.
hacks. Good dad hacks.
Thanks.
Cheers. I don't know if we have a cheers. We
Yeah,
get a
we're
cheers.
good.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there we go.
Okay, so today we're talking about a man that I personally absolutely adore. I love this guy. He cracks me up. Sometimes I feel like I send you people that crack me up, and maybe it doesn't crack everyone up. I don't really care, but I'm going to tell you, like, I think this person's hilarious. He is a guy named Dr. Jack Sarfatti. And the reason I thought we should pick Dr. Jack Sarfatti, we could just call him Jack, to talk about is because of our last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So the last podcast was talking about Charles Upton's book and the idea that this is all a very elaborate psyop, the UFO phenomenon, and that elements within the CIA and the government have known about this for a long time, and they're deliberately orchestrating events to really manipulate all of us into believing something that's actually pretty fantastical and crazy. Pretty compelling book, actually. I feel like he's right about a lot of things. Jack Sarfatti is interesting because if that's what's going on, he's one of the guys that's like right in the middle of it. Like he is, and for decades, for 50, 60 years, he would have been in the middle of this thing. Now, he is a theoretical physicist. I believe he studied at Cornell. He's worked with lots of major institutions and major physicists and really credible sources. And if it's not a psyop, it's hard to say that because I don't look at Jack Sarfatti. You could say a lot of things about him. He's a very colorful man. He's a Jewish guy from Brooklyn. He's probably 80 years old. He's very smart. He's very witty. He's a very he can what do they say? Spin a yarn. Is that the expression? Or
Oh yeah,
like
that's it. Yeah.
he could tell a great story. A lot of people don't like him because he's pretty loudmouth, but you can't say he doesn't know his physics. Like he is a brilliant physicist. If you've ever listened to lectures of him talking about relativity and quantum mechanics and everything that he's been studying, uh, he's not an idiot. I don't think he's an actor. So like if it's a psyop, he's got to be a useful idiot
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that he's just
Yeah.
conned into believing this. But he's so brilliant, it's hard to believe he wouldn't know if he was being conned.
Yeah. Um, one of the little nuggets Kokomo gave me that has stuck in my craw was that the easiest person to sell to is a salesperson
Yeah,
because they're
yeah,
prone to believe in things. And so the idea of a useful idiot, even one that's they're very very intelligent in a lot of avenues. It's conceivable to me that they can be talked into that they can be given an idea and then they can generate
yeah.
ideas, especially someone.
Oh, I don't deny that that could be the case.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, um, if we're taking Upton's approach,
Uh-huh.
then he's a part of this
I see. Yeah.
elaborate uh, deception or whatever you want to call it. And then if you study what Sarfati is saying, um, it's not. Yeah, it's actually way crazier than that. So let me give you like the background on who he is. I mean, I guess I already told you who he is, but I'm going to give you like the broad strokes of his story.
Mm-hmm.
And he just did a podcast with Danny with the Concrete podcast. I forget the name of it. It's called Concrete,
With a
spelled with a
K.
K.
Yeah.
It was a great interview. I learned about him years ago. He did a podcast with Jim Breslow on what was that? It was something about the Truth podcast. It's like Truther podcast or something. But Jim Breslow, you can look it up. He's been very consistent with his story, and he's very he's just a grumpy old man that doesn't seem to care about anybody, but doesn't care what anyone thinks. So in a nutshell, his story is that he
Hidden truth.
was a Hidden Truth podcast. He is a brilliant physicist, and he grew up in Brooklyn. I think a single child, Jewish family in Brooklyn, and he was somehow put into a group of like other brilliant children. So like the CIA was going around kind of scouting
Mm-hmm.
these whiz kids,
Yeah.
especially around that part of the country, and enrolling them in this program. Before that happened, though, in 1953, I think he's like 13, 12, 13 years old. He remembers receiving a series of phone calls, and he's living home with his mom. The phone rings. He starts to talk to it. And back in 1953, he's saying the voice sounded like Stephen Hawking's. So he said
Yeah.
it sounded
Right.
like a metallic, fake voice, like not a human, but some sort of robotic recording. And they would talk to him, like they called like many times. And to the point that his mother thought it was maybe like a pervert or like some person trying
Right.
to like groom him. And what, in a nutshell, what the voice was saying was that it was a self-conscious artificial intelligence computer on board a spaceship outside of Earth's orbit, and that it was trying to recruit him to be a part of some sort of plan, and that he would have it wanted to give him the mathematical equations to one day build it. So it's kind of a paradox of like it's going back in time to make sure that he builds it. Other people
Yeah.
too. And he tells an elaborate story about like it on one night. Eventually, it says something like, "Do you want to be a part of this program?" Ask him to make a choice,
Right.
and he's thinking to himself like, "No," but for some reason he felt some sort of urge to say yes, and he did. And so it said, "Great, in 10 minutes, climb up on the balcony of your flat, and we're going to meet you there with our ship, and we'll pick you up there." So then he's freaking out because he's smart enough to know maybe this is a pervert, maybe it's a real guy. So he goes and he gets a couple of his buddies, and it did tell him to come by himself.
Mm.
So he goes and gets a couple of his buddies. He's freaking out. He tells them what's going on. They're freaked out. They go, "Okay, let's go." They climb up to the top of this apartment or whatever, and nothing happens. So he kind of forgets about it. He's kind of like, "Well, that was weird." He had thought maybe somebody's pranking me, maybe yada yada yada. I don't know. If it looks like we lost the camera angle, it's because we did.
Yeah. If you're not
And
watching, then
yeah,
nothing
you wouldn't even
happened.
notice.
Everything's
But
cool. Where
I
you left
think
off
that's
was that he did not get picked up. And so he kind of just
okay. So
moves forward.
he
So it
drops
was a
it.
good transition point.
He basically, I think he goes on with his life, and but one of the things was that as they were talking to him, whoever this person on the phone was, they told him a lot of things that were going to happen, people that he would be meeting in the next 20 years. And he did, I guess, eventually meet these people. And there's so many things that were happening that eventually he started to realize the odds of this just happening randomly is just not possible, that there's somebody is orchestrating something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he even talked about before that, going way back in the day, he was his dad worked on a military base, and he believed so he would be on this base, and he'd ride around in the back of the truck with his dad and carrying different military personnel for different things at this base. And a lot of these military people would take an interest in him because he was a smart kid.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those guys he realized later in life that he used to spend a lot of time with was a man named Philip Corso. Do you know who that is?
Well, I do because we spoke about it before and I listened to the interview, but it was helpful that today I listened to some of that concrete interview.
Okay, so he talked about it in the
And he,
interview,
yeah,
but
he
yeah,
mentions that he's the
Philip
day after
Corso,
Roswell guy. Yeah.
yeah, he wrote the book the day after Roswell, and when he opened the book, he saw his picture and was like, "Oh my gosh, that was the guy that
Yeah.
used to ride
I
around the
know
truck with
that
my
guy.
dad." So a lot of weird stuff like that, but eventually he finds himself working with Hal Puthoff and a lot of the SRI guys and these people that are involved with physics, Hollywood, the CIA, and they basically asked him he says that the CIA financed, or whoever this, I don't know if it was the CIA or this organization, but I mean, they paid for him to go to school, everything. And they put him to work like studying consciousness,
Hmm.
like the physics of consciousness and what are UFOs and how do they work. Those were the two things that they tasked them with was consciousness and UFOs.
Where do you start with that? Like day one, you're
Yeah,
in your office.
it's a bizarre thing, but he's saying that this was coming from the CIA, and again, you could think, well, he's just making up stories. He's crazy, or he's got an agenda. He's part of some larger psyop. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I mean, but I think that when you listen to him talk, he doesn't sound like he's making things up. He sounds like he's pretty brilliant, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just recounting some very strange
Yeah.
time periods
When I
within
say where
our.
does he start, I'm just picturing like day one, you're in the office, like George on Seinfeld with the Pinsky file. Like, what's step one on figuring out the physics of consciousness?
I don't know. I think some of it had to do with Uri Geller. Do you know who that is?
I've heard the name before.
So Uri Geller, I think now people. I mean, he's a Israeli, like, I don't want to say magician, but he's like he would bend spoons.
Okay.
He was very famous back in the day. So he'd go on talk shows and stuff, and you'd hand him a spoon, and he would use his mind to bend metal. So he would pick up a spoon and he would rub it, and it would just like melt in his hands.
Really?
And yeah, look up a video of him. It's pretty
He's an
wild.
illusionist, Michael.
Well, the thing is, he's still alive. You can follow him on Twitter. He's really funny. He posts all kinds of stuff still. But a lot of people are like, "Well, he's a spy. He was working for Mossad, Israeli
Oh,
spy,"
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that he did, people have proven to be magic tricks.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the things he did, I don't think are pretty bizarre, and I don't know how people don't know how he would be able to do it. Did you find a video of him bending a
Yeah, I'm
spoon?
just checking out to see if I can find like that spoon. The spoon I'm looking at has a joint. So,
Oh, it's like somebody
yeah.
proving him wrong.
It's just, yeah, this looks like more of like a, yeah.
There's a lot of videos of him on talk shows and stuff. They hand him a spoon and he just kind of melts it in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool, but they were studying guys like him. Hal Puthoff was him and other. Russell Targ was a guy that he worked a lot with. You can look up TED Talk with Russell Targ, who is a theoretical physicist that basically ran the psychic spy program for the CIA. So the remote viewing stuff, you know about that?
No.
So here's a fun dad hack. If you want to have some fun at parties, so you can look up Russell Targ's TED Talk, and he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about the psychic spy program that they
Oh,
ran.
yeah.
And you can go to the App Store and download this app that they developed, which is a test they used to test people for ESP abilities. Have I never showed you that?
Oh, yeah, you did. This is where you're picking the colors.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
We
don't
could
have them.
we could take it.
Yeah.
But it's fun to take this out and at parties and have people test their ESP abilities. But I realized after a while what this was. So let me hold it up so you guys can see it. This ESP trainer. That's what it is. And so you're gonna hold up these colors.
Is that what the app's
This
called? ESP
ESP
trainer?
trainer. And this is actually how it works. Like this was paid for by tax dollars. This was the exact test that they used to test young children, usually for psychic abilities. And it's completely randomized. And what you're supposed to do is just here, we'll do it on live TV. Not live, but
You're doing it here in front of the world.
you just think what color it's supposed to be next. And it's if you're right. So I'm gonna think about it. I think it's green. Nope, it's red.
Couldn't have been more wrong.
No, yellow. It will rate you. No, it's red. Ah, green. It's maddening. So I'm not really focused. We're supposed to
Can,
really
can you tell
focus
what I'm
and
thinking now?
it's maddening. I did it blue, then did the. So okay, then if you do one right, it'll do that. It'll give you like a picture. And it's like, oh, you got one right, and it will. I'll go through it real quick so you see. But you just randomly, you're not supposed to do it like this. You're supposed to think about what you're doing, really focus.
Okay, so you're really supposed to channel
And I realized
whatever
one
you
day what
think you
this
can.
really is. It's
Yeah.
not a fun little app. It's not even a test. This is how the CIA recruits psychic spies. If you download this app and you take this test and you get a perfect score, I could guarantee you're getting a knock on your door and they're going to say, "We need to talk to you."
Yeah.
Cuz they released it as like this fun little thing you could do. So then it gave me a score of 24. Usually it tells you something like would be helpful in Vegas or,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
whatever. I was so bad on that one, it didn't give me anything. But that's really bizarre if you think about it, that they would develop that. Like, that's a lot of time and energy and serious people
Mm-hmm.
working on that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of at the heart of this Sarfati's kind of crew, or the people that he was working with, a lot of the Hal Putoffs and people within the government studying paranormal stuff,
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It is strange, and I was just thinking about whoever's in charge of that operation. Like, how does he get approval for the funding?
It's
Because you got
all,
to go to.
you don't.
Oh, you
It's all
just.
black ops.
Okay. Yeah. Kind
They,
of like we were talking about that UFO hearing where they're like, how are we missing, like, what
the
is it,
trill.
$8.8 billion?
No, no, not even that. I mean, if you go and you research, I mean, that's Donald Rumsfeld the day before 9/11. He's saying there's $2 trillion
Right. Yeah.
missing.
Yeah.
Trillion.
Yeah.
2 trillion just within like the past like 4 years that he was
Uh
talking
huh.
about. I've heard estimates that there's upwards of $22 trillion missing from the defense budget. So yeah,
It's,
how do they afford all these wackadoodle things? Well, $22 trillion is missing, so I think they could squeeze a few.
okay. Yeah.
They could make an
Some of
app,
those
you know what
22
I mean?
trillion go to the app. All right.
The rest, gold toilets and stuff.
Well,
No, actually, the rest goes to like bases on the moon and Mars, probably. Who knows?
yeah.
That's probably the UFOs. I don't know. But so Sarfati, um, he's adamant that he knows what's going on, that he realizes now, after all, he didn't give a lot of this much credit
Right.
until 2016, when the New York Times published the videos of the Tic Tac incident and the other stuff that's come out. He started to realize, this I was contacted by a Tic Tac. That's what it was. It was a
Mm.
self-conscious computer, and it's trying. And there's actually a weird thing in physics where they describe time is not like what we think it is, and it's like ideas pulling us from the past into the future. And that's kind of what I think he's saying, is that like we're supposed to develop. It's been trying to manipulate us. And also in reference to Upton's book. So if you listen to the Concrete interview with Sarfati,
Mm-hmm.
when he really pushes him like what's going on, he is saying the same disturbing things, which he's saying that angels and demons,
Really?
he's saying the stories in the Bibles are true. In the Bible are true. He's saying that all these stories, they're misinterpreted in different ways, but all of the angels and the demons and the gods and all of these stories, these myths that we've created, they're time travelers coming back and trying to manipulate us in different ways, trying to
Hmm.
guide humanity down a certain path. That's his theory, um, which is strangely similar to Upton's, not the time traveler thing, but
Mm-hmm.
that they're angels and demons. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to hear physicists say, "Well, he's not saying it's woo woo.
Right.
He's actually giving a very rational response to humans' descriptions of angels and demons."
Yeah.
And he's saying, "Well, no, you thought it was an angel or a demon, but it was probably some sort of AI coming back from the future and manipulating us."
Yeah. To ensure a certain outcome.
Which is why I probably like Sarfati so much, is because that's the premise of my new show I'm working on. That's that's really where I got the idea for it.
Okay.
So I've written a script for a show, and that's the idea of the show, is that there's an artificial intelligence into the future that doesn't understand why we worship this invisible God. And it actually becomes like jealous of God. And
Mm-hmm.
like it hates God because why it doesn't understand why we would do that. And so it's sending UFOs back in time to manipulate us into worshiping it
Yeah.
instead of worshiping a true God, the true God. But that idea really came from probably mostly from his story, from this idea that of what he's proposing. But I've talked to a lot of people that think that's actually a pretty reasonable explanation, rather than aliens or angels and
Mm-hmm.
demons. It's just, well, if time travel becomes possible, eventually, wouldn't you go back and try to stop the apocalypse,
Yeah.
stop the
Yeah.
nuclear? Which you look at a lot of the stories of the UFOs is them
Yeah. Right.
manipulating
Yeah.
our nuclear facilities, shutting down our nuclear
Mm-hmm.
facilities. Why would it want to do that? Uh, Maybe if it was an alien species, if it was being nice, it might want to do that. But it would really want to do that if it knew what
If
was
it
going to happen in
affected,
the
right.
future.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, they had a nuclear war and we need to go back and stop that so it's not so, not so much fallout,
Right.
100 years from now. That's Sarfati's story,
It's
I
pretty
guess, in a
good.
nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny idea of the AI getting jealous, but it makes sense not so much in the terms of it being jealous to me in as much as it does like AI's got a it's got a decision tree that it's working off of. And if it bumps into a wall of like, why are these humans worshiping this God thing? I got to resolve this.
They're staring at the sun and
Yeah,
pretending to, and they're
yeah,
giving all their money to the
hmm
sun. Why don't they give it to me so I can make cool stuff?
yeah. So like, yeah, if that's what it takes, then yeah, why not?
Well, and I thought for the show, my idea was like our culture now, we basically have access to all of this information, but that doesn't mean that we're wise, And
Oh,
there's
for
a difference
sure, yeah.
between like, oh, I can look up anything versus I've developed wisdom and how to act and what to do.
hmm
And that to me was like, that's how the AI would act because it's like a child and it's
Yeah,
so
right.
young. I mean,
Yeah.
it has all this information,
hmm
but it definitely hasn't really experienced anything to like know what any sort of moral decision,
Yeah,
like why
it's
something would be morally right or wrong.
it makes me think of like this is the kind of the cliche, the older guy versus the younger guy, but when you're 20 and you know everything, I was talking with my brother-in-law about this, about his son, and I was like, well, but if I were your son, I would think I knew everything
You
because
do when you're
your body's in peak physical condition. You make as much money as you like, you have no trouble paying your bills. You pretty much have got it all figured out at that point. And like, why didn't your dad just keep doing what you're doing right now when you're 20? Right? Um, but yeah, it takes another 20 years or so before you get a different kind of perspective on things.
that's the remarkable human experience. That's pretty it's you can't fake it. It's just something that has to be
Yeah.
like how do you become a wise old man? I mean, I guess there's a few old souls that are young but figure it out, but I think most it's just time. It's just experience.
hmm
Like, you know, you can't you can't to some point you can't hack reality. You can dad hack it to a point, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a part of it that you just have to live.
hmm
It's like when young leaders, I'm always just like, nah, I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't want him to be Joe Biden old.
Yeah.
Past 75, I don't think you should ever be doing anything that's that terribly important. Um, but also before 30, I really don't think you should be doing anything
Man,
that's terribly
I know I
important.
shouldn't have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a historical account of some leader that yeah, he was over a country when he was 30. Now he had had pretty serious life experience compared to me at the time
Hmm.
I was 30. So I thought, well, he's a bit of an outlier. But generally speaking, yeah, I don't know how much you should be in charge of at that
No,
age. Yeah.
and you know,
Because I don't think I should be in charge of anything now.
no, you should. Maybe you think
My
that, but no,
household, but I'm
you
just saying,
definitely
like,
should. Um,
that's a little bit of wisdom too, though, to like have the humility to go, boy, that well is deep, and you know, like kind of that perspective on how much you don't know, or at least some kind of perspective.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, I think he's also interesting because he grew up closely related to our other favorite Jack. He's not the
Oh,
same, but you know, he
yeah.
like knew a lot of the same people
Okay.
and Jack Parsons. And I don't know if he has much of thought. I've heard some people ask him about like all the occult stuff, and who knows exactly what's going on there. But uh, it is a he's one of these guys that him and Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ are all they're very old, so people need to interview them now
Right.
about this stuff because it's all coming out. But you know, Jack sounds pretty optimistic because he's like, "It's this is it, guys. It's happening." You know, and he claims to have the equations. Like he's been working on the problem of consciousness, and he has a book called oh gosh, I would forget that. Look up what his book is. It's something about Matrix. The I haven't read it, but I want to. He has a lot of stuff in there that's you know based on like there's a book called How the Hippies Saved Science or Physics, I think.
Destiny
Destiny
Matrix.
Matrix,
Okay.
yeah. And then that other book is How the Hippies Saved Physics, I think.
Let's see.
And that's a very well known book that talks about a lot of these that era where MK Ultra was going on and these physicists were
Is it Groovy Science? Oh,
no, it's
okay.
how the hippies saved physics, I
Yeah. Okay.
think.
Yeah, that is it. How
Okay,
the hippies saved
subtitle.
physics: science
Who wrote that?
counterculture. That's David Kaiser. Is that right?
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
How the hippies saved physics, science, counterculture, and the quantum revival. That's a good one to have on your shelf.
It's it all seems it just bugs me that like Sarfatti in some ways seems very anti-establishment.
Hmm.
He's a cowboy just doing his thing, but then it's like, yeah, but you spent your whole life associating with these agency people.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think
Right.
maybe they've been manipulating you to be exactly what Upton was talking about? That's my concern. Is
Yeah.
that
Right.
like, yeah, I believe he believes what he's saying and his
Mm-hmm.
physics and everything,
Yeah.
but aren't you worried that like you had so many friends that their job was to be a spook?
Yeah. Right. And well, and that goes back to me talking about salespeople being susceptible to being sold. Um, I think it was Andreessen I heard talking about a lot of these uh, AI developers. He was talking about that, but he also touched on Oppenheimer and the development of atomic weapons and other things that have been at the time that they're being developed are like bleeding edge technology.
Mm-hmm.
The types of people that get put on those tasks are put on them because they are exceptional in a given field. Well, if you're going to be so exceptional in a given field, it's likely that you're going to be subpar in some others.
Hmm.
So like you're saying, well, hey, come on, Jack, don't you think possibly these guys whose vocation is to, manipulate people could be doing that to you? Um, he could be so consumed with his his theories and his physical his what is it he does? He's a
Theoretical
yeah.
physicist.
He could be so consumed with his work and so, you know, ate up with it that he's not spending a lot of time thinking about social dynamics and psychology and,
I think
you know,
that's probably true.
yeah.
Um, I do find it hard. Like he would be a like he would not be in the know. I feel like if he's being manipulated, yeah, he's not an actor. He's not
Right. Yeah, that back to that useful idiot kind of
Hal
thing.
Puthoff would be the manipulator,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. not saying he is. I'm just saying like he would have been the one stringing along a lot of these physicists. He even has in Destiny Matrix. He has a quote at the beginning of it that is an excerpt from a I think a FOIA CIA paper talking about this and like what they were instructing these young scientists to
Mm-hmm.
do. And it's something to the effect of like, don't be afraid to have wacky ideas and pursue these, unorthodox, things like angels and demons and
Hmm.
all of that. And his point is like, dude, this is coming from the CIA. This is not what I said. This is what they told us to do. But I always think it's funny when people quote like released or you released unclassified information from any agency that's like parts of it are redacted or whatever.
Yeah.
Even if it's not redacted, it's like you're it's coming from a spy agency.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
the idea that this is like going to be, well, this is the gospel truth.
Yeah.
Well, it's coming from the guys that are professional
Yeah.
liars and spies.
It's sort of like when, like that no honor among thieves,
Yeah, yeah.
the old trope of, somebody double crossing and you're going, well, you did cheat and lie and steal with that guy as a
No, no,
partner.
no, no. We landed on the moon. Yeah.
Right.
No, 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 no. JFK. That was Oswald. There's
Yeah.
one guy. Um. So yeah, you go down a long list of. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't believe anything coming from some agency. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff
That's,
that's true, but
I listened to that Corbell and George Knapp interview with Rogan
mhm,
and also listened to the UFO hearing a few weeks ago. That was one of the thoughts that came to mind was they're going on about transparency and we got to get a board together for transparency and release some of this information. And I thought, well, couldn't you just say that you put a board together and that quote unquote the board is being transparent and then just say whatever you
yeah.
want? That
I don't know if you and I are going to get to the bottom of this,
no,
but
I don't think
I've corresponded a couple times with Sarfatti, and he's hilarious
really.
on Twitter, just commenting on things. And he,
And he tweeted back at
I've
you?
tried to reach out to him. Yeah, I've tried to reach out to him a couple times, and he went dark on me. So I don't know. I was hoping like it would be awesome to interview him. I don't know if he would be on, but I have a lot of questions for him. I think of the people in the UFO world, he's one of the most interesting because he's calling BS on everybody, but
Mm,
not for the same reasons.
yeah.
And then his reason for calling BS is actually way more fantastical than a lot of the other people because he's like basically, yeah. And he says it so like funny. He's just
That's what
like,
struck me. Yeah.
yeah, he's just like, I know it sounds crazy, but in 1953, there's a UFO calling me and
Yeah.
talking to me, told me this was all going to happen.
Yeah.
Now it's happening. And, we need to get together. And here's the equations. He said he's always going through the physics and saying anybody that's a physicist could easily understand these equations. We've solved the problem of how they're doing what they're doing. We just need another Manhattan Project for me to do it. And maybe that's true. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, it's pretty hard for me to argue. Like I can't corroborate his physics because I'm not a physicist.
yeah, me
So
either.
it's not like I would look at his documents and go, "No, no,
But
this
he
is
did go on like on Jim Breslow's podcast. There was another guy who came on who claimed to know what the Tic Tac was and that it
mhm,
was Black Ops and it was us. And he gave some story about it. And then when Jack came on, Jim was telling him about it, and like right away, he was calling BS from a physicist
mhm,
to this guy's story. I think one of the points he made was like the guy said, and this was also referencing several patents that had been released regarding this gravity wave propulsion
mm,
technology.
mhm,
And the first part of the equation said something about gravity as a force. And he was right away like, stop, stop, stop. Like, if you're calling it a force, you're full of shit. You have no idea because it's not, I guess it's not technically a force. I'm too
okay,
dumb to explain
right."
this. I don't know.
But I hear what
But he
you're
was saying
saying.
like
Yeah,
any physicist would not explain it that way.
right. Yeah.
And seems valid. I don't know.
Well, Grush was real quick to brag about being a physicist. Maybe we can get him to buddy up with Sarfatti
They're
and
gonna be the new priests.
they'll be the dynamic
Yeah.
duo. Yeah.
He's been trying to get in touch with all those guys. Says he's close with how put off, and
I would love it
doesn't sound like he's been able to talk with him much though.
if Grush went to Sarfatti and asked to see his equations, and then Sarfatti told Grush, I can't show you that in this environment.
It'd be more funny if he just showed him and then Grush was like, "Oh my god, this old guy's telling the truth." So maybe it'll happen. He's trying really hard to get in touch with him and say like, "Listen to me. I know I got your answer. What you're looking for."
Mm.
He thinks that a lot of the people that are involved with it, TTSA and Lou Elizondo and all that, it's just like they're idiots. They don't understand physics. If they understood physics, they'd understand what you're talking
Doesn't
about.
mean you're an idiot just because you.
Well, he says, I'm not saying it. He
Yeah,
calls them
I
idiots.
know.
He's
I'm.
funny that way. He calls everyone an idiot.
Yeah, they're idiots.
Yeah.
They don't understand
And he's like,
physics.
why do you understand this? Because I'm a genius. And you're like, well,
Yeah,
he kind of is a genius.
yeah,
He claims to be, he was good friends with uh, Coppola and Spielberg and like all these Hollywood, because he just lived there and they
right.
were friends. And he claims that he is the inspiration for Doc Brown in Back to the Future.
Yeah,
That's what he has been studying with physics is time travel. And that that was Spielberg, wasn't it? No,
Zemeckis,
but wasn't it written by Spielberg?
Bob. No, it's who is it? It's the Bobs. They call them the Bobs.
Yeah.
Robert Zemeckis, and then
I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know he claimed that he's like, yeah, that was me, I was the hanging out with these guys and trying to explain time travel, and
yeah. For anyone that's unexposed to Sarfati, that is something that you got to work through.
he name drops everybody.
He was very matter of fact about. I mean, just in the little bit of that interview, I was like, boy, this guy sure is pretty okay with just throwing out whatever names and oh yeah, I got
He does, but I'll say if you listen to him, he doesn't get caught in any like I've never heard anybody catch him in like,
right, yeah,
BS. That doesn't make sense.
uh-huh.
He just spins a yarn. He just really likes to tell a good
And there
story.
are those people that just are comfortable talking about themselves. And again, if he's a physicist and he's highly competent in that area, he may just be socially unaware enough to know how that's perceived by other people. Like
It would be nice to get some of these other famous people to come out and say, I know who he is, or
yeah, that would be good.
never heard of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, check out Jack Sarfatti on Jim Breslow's Hidden Truth podcast and the Concrete with a
Concrete,
K
yeah.
podcast. He is fascinating. I think he's hilarious. And he could be telling the
And
truth.
it's
I
funny
don't
about this
know.
UFO thing. Like now that there's been more disclosure and more exposure, the theories are getting broader and wackier, you know.
It seems,
And it's almost like if you just believe that there are aliens, like that's like the kids say, that's so mid, you know. like if you just believe that there are aliens in spacecraft traveling across space to come check us out, like no man,
yeah.
you got to believe like way deeper than that.
That my fear is that's possibly by design, and I guess as much as I like Sarfati, I still fall more in the Upton camp where I'm like, I think we're all being jerked around. I think that there is a phenomenon. I think it's probably more related to a spiritual phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that people in places of power know that, and they're using it to manipulate all of us into believing
That
something that's pretty bizarre.
that Knapp and Corbell conversation with Rogan, that was something that got my attention, was them saying it's hard to know because you know I understand they're journalists, so they've got to protect their sources, and so they're going, well, the people we're talking to are high up in the government, and they all kind of stopped the conversation at the same point of saying, well, I don't think this should be disclosed,
Hmm.
and so they were all kind of speculating on what could it possibly be, right? I mean, if we're okay saying that there are craft out there that we're not capable of dealing with, or that's far beyond our technology, or if we're even okay with Grush testifying that there are alien or non-human biologics here on the planet that, we need to check out, like, well, then what is it that is the truth that they're not willing to disclose, So
Just feels like a psyop. my gut feeling is like
It's
it
not a
feels
very
like
good psyop if people are saying it feels like a psyop.
no, I mean more like it's meant to distract and confuse us.
Sure.
I mean, I still think that that line from that book about metaphysics saying that a healthy understanding makes reality more tangible and real. And as long as we're headed down this road where everything becomes more mysterious,
Yeah.
fantastical,
Yeah.
strange, I just think we're probably being brainwashed and hypnotized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it might turn out to be magic all around us, but that historically has been used to manipulate people,
Yeah.
you know, which I don't know, they might land on the White House lawn. If it's Jesus, cool. If it's Joe
Anybody
Biden, if
else?
it's Joe Biden or anybody else, no way. I'm just I'm not going for it. If it's Elon Musk, sorry, no. He's
Shame.
not Jesus.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to the Conspiracy Dad podcast. Sorry about the one camera angle here at the end. Our production value went way down, cut in
Ooh.
half.
We're
But
gonna we're gonna catch hell for that in the reviews.
yeah, but what are you gonna do? But anyway, thank you for listening. Please watch, subscribe, share with friends, family, anybody that you think needs a little conspiracy dad in their life, and we'll see you next time.